This is going to be the first part 1 in the series of tutorials to help you complete, to tutor you through the steps so you can complete yourself the Capstone Project in SIMnet Excel 365 Capstone Project, which is also, if we scroll down a little bit, they call it Project 2. I will be doing this on Windows. I'm usually a Mac user, so because I'm doing this on Windows, this will highlight whenever there's a difference between Mac and Windows, and I will try to point it out. Just like all the other projects, it starts with a start file, resources. Should your teacher allow you to or choose, you will have available a solution file, which is a PDF of what it looks like. I have that and I will be using it, and I've already downloaded these files and I have opened the start file, and here it is. Also, I've already completed step number 1, which is to open it, and if that enable editing button shows up, it did show up, I clicked it, and now it's enabled editing. It's that yellow strip that shows up here. You click enable editing. Now we're ready to perform some real steps. Let's see, the file will be renamed automatically, so if it has usually your name and the project name, you leave it the same way unless your teacher tells you to change it. I don't tell my students to change it. The next thing they tell you to do is to import. We've done that, I think, in project number 3 or 4. Import the tab delimited, so the information in that file is separated by tabs, and that's that resource file that we downloaded to cell A19 sheet 1. So first we will get to this point, to the word sheet 1. First of all, how do we import it? First of all, I select A19. So here I'm scrolling up, scrolling down until I find A19. Then to import data, I go to the Data tab. Now, if this was a Mac, I would have to pull down this menu and find something like Import Text Legacy. And it would bring up a dialog, and you have instructions for the Mac users how to go through that dialog in your instructions, which are actually kind of simpler than on Windows. On Windows, we have a special button called From Text CSV, which I will click. It pops up a dialog that asks me, okay, what file would you like to import? And I already see it, but even if I didn't, I would go to my downloads, and here it is. TXT, Blue Lake Project 2 TXT. By the way, if you don't see the extension .txt, it means your computer is hiding extensions, but you should still have all the name up to the TXT. When I import, it's going to show a dialog. Now, what's important is not to click just load, but to pull down this little menu and tell it where to load to. And that's where we're going to see what they're talking about. Where do they want us to download this? To the existing worksheet, cell A19 in absolute terms, and not to check add this data to the data model. In other words, saying this is like a guest. Let it join the existing data model. Let's read the wording. Verify that the add this data to the data model box in the import data dialog box is not checked before you click OK. The data imports in an Excel table and repositions the existing data. What do they mean by that? They mean that if I click OK, it moves everything that used to be A, B, C to D, E, and F and inserts this here. In the instructions, they actually even give you a screenshot of what it looks like, and it looks just like mine. ABC with those, with this new table. Then the existing data was moved to DEF, and there's even like an overlap of one empty row here. Now we're going to move this. Select the cells A20, C33, copy them to the clipboard. Do not include the blank row. So the blank row is like the 34, I think. So A20, C33. A20 all the way to C33. So don't include 34, even though it's colored. And under Home, I will copy. Just click Copy. Then, after copy always comes paste. So where do they want us to paste this? Select cell D19 and open the Paste Gallery. Choose Formulas to paste the data without formatting. There's actually more than one way of doing this. So first of all, D19 is where they want us to paste this. This would be like the top left corner of what they want us to paste. And when I go home, and this is the Paste Gallery, and there's all kinds of options. What they're talking about is that paste formulas. On the Mac, you can use paste and keep original formatting, and it'll work just fine. But here on Windows, they tell us to paste formulas, which basically means paste without, the colors and the fonts and all that. Click and see how it matches the format of everything else. We took only the data from here, brought it here. Save. Press Escape to canceling to cancel that moving border. So Escape, and now no borders are moving because it used to have like those crawling ants around it. Next, they want us to step 4, insert a blank row at row 4. So I'm going to row 4. Right-click, insert. Notice that it will insert it between them. So now that there's a new blank row 4, what used to be 4 has been pushed to 5. So there's like a nice separator between them. Save. Then format the cells D5, F75 as an Excel table with blue table. So first of all, we'll format as the table, and then we'll make sure that the style is blue table style medium 2. So D5 F75. Let's start D5 F all the way down to 75, which is the last row. How do we do that? By going Insert, Table. Where's your data? D5 F75. My table has headers? Yes, it does. It so happens that the default style that it already got is this, which is the blue table style medium 2. So I didn't even have to choose it. If I did, it would be in table design, table styles. So now there should be 1, 2, 3 empty, and then the city, department, and transactions. Just to make sure, I'm going to go to my solutions and find it's not the first one. Here it is. You see how there's 1, 2, 3, empty row, and then the table. Save. But there's still this left over, so we're going to take care of it very, very soon. Here it is. Select and delete columns A through C, because that's where we borrowed the data from, but we don't need it anymore. So column A, I'm holding Shift on the keyboard, and B, and C. Now I can let go of Shift, right-click, and cut or delete. Cut is when I want to paste it. Delete is just go away. And now it really looks like what it needs to look like. Save. Next, select the cells. Now they want them to look nice and centered and everything. Select cells A1 through A3. Change the font to 14. So 1, 2, 3, A1 through 3. Change the font size to 14. Next, set the width of column A through C to 15. So it will take selecting column A, hold Shift, B, I'm still holding Shift, C, holding Shift, right click, and column width, right click on them, column width 15, okay, save. And then they want us to apply something called apply center across selection commands to these cells, and then go home. So go home is just to select cell A1. So that control home thing is just to select cell A1. But first we need to do apply across selection. Where do we find that? While those three cells are selected, A1 through 3, I right-click. I find the word Format Cells. On the Mac, I think it's just called Format, doesn't matter, Format Cells. It brings up a dialog. In that dialog, there's a category. On the Mac, it's exactly the same, just the buttons look a little rounder, called Alignment, and it has horizontal and vertical. And under horizontal, instead of general, I'm going to choose Center Across Selection. What does that do? Even though these are only in column A, sorry, actually I didn't select the right thing. What I need to select is everything, A, B, and C. Then right-click and Format Cells, and then Alignment instead of General, Center Across Selection, click OK. And look at what happens. Even though the data is still A, 1, 2, 3, it centers across the selection of A, B, and C. Without, this is still an independent cell, but whatever it says in A just spans across it. Save. What they say now is to rename the worksheet to Transactions, which I can either type or right-click, copy, go here. Instead of the sheet called Sheet 1, I double-click and paste, Control V. On the Mac, it's Command V, or you could just type it, whatever seems less work to you. And I click outside to see that it took the name. We are up to requirement number 5, but I think we will do that on part 2 of this tutorial. See you in part 2. This is going to be part 2 of the series of tutorials for completing SIMnet, Excel, Capstone. In part 1, we got as far as completing step 4, which was a pretty long one. It had G sub-steps. And now we're up to step number 5, where they tell us to copy and rename a worksheet. They want us to make a copy of the worksheet called Transactions and name the copied one as Filtered. So let's find Transactions. Here it is. Right-click, Move or Copy. Very important, let me bring this here to make sure that we're creating a copy. And where are we copying it? To the same workbook. So I'm clicking OK, and it created a copy of it, and they want us to call that copy Filtered. Instead of Transactions 2. I copied and pasted, but I could have just typed Filtered. So now we have Transactions and Filtered, and they're identical. Then they're telling us to create another copy of it. Make another copy of Transaction Sheet at the end, and name it. Okay, so this one, they want us to make it at the end of the tabs. Let me do it again. Even though I can actually move it to be at the end, let me show you how that, how I should have done it with the next copy. Transactions, right-click, Move or Copy. Before sheet, move to end and make a copy. And that way, it makes it at the end. Now, what do they want us to call that? Again, to put it at the end, even if I put it in the wrong place, I can always drag it to be the end one. So now this copy should be called Sunburst Data. Why? Because we're going to apply to it a chart, and the name of that kind of chart is Sunburst. I think you're going to see exactly why it's called Sunburst. But for right now, first of all, I'm going to name it Sunburst Data. Oh, I created a sheet 3 by mistake, which I do not need. I clicked on the plus. OK, save. We did this, and we did this. Sort and filter data. Select the filtered worksheets tab. Now that's where we need to be careful, because now we got 3 that looks exactly the same. Transactions, it's copy called filtered, and it's copy called Sunburst data. They want us to select the one called filtered. And what do they want us to do with that? Sort the data in ascending order by department. So I'm going to go to department. I'm going to click this little pull down menu and sort A to Z, which is ascending. And it sorts it for, apparel, basic A, B, C, and so on. That's the whole point of having a table, or one of the biggest points of having a table, so you can sort it by headers. Next, select, sort the data in ascending order by department. Show the total row for the table. How do we do that? In the table, when we have the table selected, we should have a table design tab, and one of the things that we can do there is activate the option total row, and total row will display a total at the bottom. Without it, with it. Save. Again, that's in the tab table design, the checkbox called total row. Filter the table to show only the bike and skate and game room data, which can be shown on figure 2. Where's figure 2? I don't see figure 2. There is no figure 2. Okay, no problem. Only the bike and skate and game room. So, where do I see that? This is where I got all those departments, right? I'm going to click this and tell it to turn off everything. I'm gonna, turn off, select all. Everything is unselected, and the only ones they want to show is bike and skate and running. Okay, and you see how it hid everything else, and it's also not participating in the total. And save. Let me make sure I did the right thing. Yeah, only bike and skate. Oh, and game room. I'm sorry, not running, game room. So let's do it again. Game room. Okay, bike and skate, game room. Notice how they're still in alphabetical order. Save. Is this the end of this step? Yes, this is the end of step 6. Before I move on to step 7, I am going to look at the finished result. This is transactions, transaction data, lookup data. Filtered shows bike and skate and game room, and the total of all of them is 768. That's exactly what I got. So now I can really move to the next step. We're going to create a pivot table. In the pivot table, we're going to select the transactions worksheet. Remember, pivot table is like a very sophisticated filter. It's a filter that gives meaning to the data. So we're going to select transactions, and then a pivot table creates a new sheet from raw data. So what they're telling us to do is to select transactions, select A5, which is the first cell, and create a blank pivot table layout on a new worksheet. So A5, is it A5? Let's make sure. Yep, A5. And how do we insert here's A5. How do we insert a pivot table? Insert. And right here is pivot table. Click. If I pull down the menu, nope, not from, just click. New worksheet, range table, table 4, new worksheet, and I'm not checking anything else. Notice that it started a new sheet. It's calling it sheet 4. It doesn't matter what name it gives. We're gonna rename it, and it has. Let me make it nice and wide, and it opens this wizard for asking us, okay, so what kind of data do you want, and how do you want it to be arranged? And this is where they tell us the following. So we did this, we did this, we did this. Okay, requirement C. Show the department, city, and transactions field. These are checkboxes waiting for us to be checked. Department, city, transactions. Then arrange the city field in the filters area. Look at what it needs to look like. There's a little filters area and it needs to say city. How do we do that? By taking the word city and dragging it into filters. And now it says city. Next, department field in rows area, where it says rows. Oh, it already says department. I'm okay. And the transaction field in the values area. Sum of transactions, values. So just by dragging city, it actually populated the rest. This is where I'm going to be talking to the Mac users. At this point, I highly recommend switching to the Windows instructions, because this screenshot will actually work also for Mac, but the screenshot they have for Mac is extremely confusing and doesn't really look like the way it would look on your Mac. This, ironically, from Windows will be a lot more helpful. And you will do it exactly the same way that I just showed you. You drag city into filters and it shows city. If for some reason it doesn't show department in rows, you drag department and then you drag transactions here. But usually the first drag will do all of it. And it looks, if I'm looking at it, it looks exactly the way it looks for me, including the number 4,758 and all of this. Let's see if there's anything else we need to do here. We just did D, and we just need to rename that pivot table. Remember, it created a new worksheet. We're going to name it pivot table with capital P and capital T. Instead of sheet 4, I am pasting what I copied, or I could just type it. Whatever you feel is more, is easier. Save. And that was 7E. Let's go to 8. Create and format a clustered column pivot chart. From this pivot table, they want to create a chart. Select cell A4 in pivot table and insert a clustered column pivot chart. Clustered column pivot chart. A4. Why is it A4? Why not A3? Because A4 is the first piece of data in this table. And we're going to insert a pivot chart. Let's actually kill this. We don't need this. A4. Let's select A4 and pivot chart. Why is it not letting me do that? I'm going to stop this part of the tutorial, figure it out, and I'll see you in the next part.